Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the show. This is the last race. I'm going to do the last chapter in the racetrack gangs. Basically, what this will be about is just pretty much covering off this particular era within the racetrack gangs. As I say, it did go on for about 40 years, so there was probably another 30 years after this era. But I just wanted to just touch on a few points. I'd like to thank you for viewing and really just cover the previous episode. I just want to get us up to date. So, obviously, in the last episode, I covered the chapter where we was talking about the incident that happened in Grazing Road. Hello there, Delilah. Okay, I'm just going to stop here now, just for a moment, just so I greet the chat. Here we go. Delilah, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. As I say, this is why I sort of put this together at short notice. And a man from the Labourers Union from Boston. Hello, Mr. David T. Good to see you, sir. All good, my friend. Thank you for joining me. Good stuff. I'll give it a few more seconds just to allow a few more of you to come in. Just so what I'm going to do is just really go over the previous episode. Just because there was about a 3 or 4 day delay from when I last did it. I think it was Monday actually. Yeah, so 5-6 days. So we'll just do a recap and then we'll get right to it. Okay. Yeah, we're having a bit of a mild winter at the moment over here in the UK, thankfully. Nothing too heavy with the snow. Right. Good stuff. So I want to touch on in the last episode, we're talking about the phrase that was in Grazing Road and Mornington Crescent with the Sabinis. Now we know the law has stepped up their pursuit of the Sabini and the Cortese families. Morris Fireman was attacked on a pitch at Epsom Downs by the Sabini clan. McCausland assaulted William Homer. And then I went into great detail with the death at the Eden Social Club with the Sabini associate Alf Solomon. He murdered Barnett Blitz after Barney had an altercation with Emmanuel. So I'm just going to get right to it. Okay, so now it's widespread gang warfare. 15 months after his acquittal for attacking Morris Fireman, Harry Sabini was at it again, this time at the Y races on the 29th of September 1924. When after the last race, bookmakers Harry Fellows and Joseph Taylor were chased by a group of men who knocked them to the ground. Fellows received the worst injuries. One of the gang held his head up while another punched him in the face with full force. The wound on his forehead was said to be as big as the palm of one of his hands, and both men were kicked 4 or 5 times. However, this time the assaults were witnessed by Detective Jenner, and as a result, Antonio Alfred Babe Mancini was arrested at the scene, whilst the others fled, but warrants were soon issued for Thomas Mack, Pasqualino Papa, and Harry Sabini, and the 4 men appeared at Ashford Police Court. The Sabini acolytes were there true to their code. Harry was absolved of all blame. His case was dismissed, and the others were each sentenced to 1 month's hard labour. As a footnote, Mancini, who was also to use the name Stevens, was a mixed bag of criminal talents, violence certainly on this occasion, but also a sneak thief. So in July 1935, he was sentenced to 3 months with hard labour for being a suspected person loitering to pickpockets. And then 3 years later, Woodbridge justices packed him off to hard labour for 12 months for pinching a wallet and a coat. Mancini was a fervent Jew hater, and whilst he was serving his sentence, he displayed his anti-Semitic disposition by spitting in Jewish prisoners' food. Unfortunately for him, one of those affected by his exportations was Jack Comer. And we remember Jack Spot Comer, better known as the gangland boss, Jack the Spot, who promptly smashed the living shit out of him. So I'm just going to pause there. As I say, this is back in that era. The language will get colourful, so apologies to anyone. But as I say, this is not for the light-hearted. Now, it was the beginning of a downward path for Mancini, as in due course we shall see. 6 months after that acquittal, Harry Sabini featured once more when William Thomas Preswell became involved in an argument in a cafe in Upper Street. And this was in Islington with the Phillips brothers, Johnny and Arthur. After a while, Arthur left, but then returned with another man. Plus Harry Sabini, sensing danger, Preswell went to leave the cafe, at which point Arthur hit him on the head with an iron bar. The two men grappled and the bar was dropped, but it was picked up by Johnny, who used it to strike Preswell on the back of the head. Crack. Ouch. Sabini handed a knife to Johnny, who struck out to Preswell's face. The latter received defence wounds on the back of his hands in protecting himself. And yet it was only Johnny Phillips who appeared in the dock at Clerkenwell Court. Sabini cut me in the face at Brighton and I had 26 stitches put in me, Johnny told his defence counsel. Mr. Ricketts, practically doubling the number of his stitches inserted on this occasion for dramatic effect, as well as omitting the names of Messrs. Langham and Ford, inserting Sabini instead. I suggest you were attacked by the Sabini gang, said Mr. Ricketts to Preswell, who replied, the Phillipses had enough beer at the time, but it would have been all right but for Sabini. But Harry steered clear of the dock and another case fizzled out. Thus the attacks continued in February 1925. 5 men were razor slashed and kicked at Aldgate in front of a large crowd. 2 months later, another 5 men were attacked with razors and iron bars behind Euston Station. And in August, 2 gangs totaling 20 men fought it out with razors in Shaftesbury Avenue. In the same month, Racetrack gang members were travelling on top of an omnibus when a fight broke out in the Woodford Road. Hello there, Suzanne. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you. The conductor, Mr. G. Allen, ascended the stairs in order to quell the trouble, was hit on the head with a bottle and knocked from the top of the bus into the roadway. Taken to Woodford Hospital for treatment, he reported for duty at Leighton Garage the following day, but his condition worsened and he was placed sick again. Mr. Allen was yet another innocent casualty of the Racetrack gang wars. Hello there, Janie. Thank you for coming. Okay. Thomas Edward Bennyworth, he was known as, variously as Monkey and the Trimmer, could only be described as a pretty horrible character. Born in 1894, in South London, he was very large and vicious bully. In 1917, he was flogged for attacking a warder, and according to Saffron Hill folklore, it was his jaw that was broken by Darby Sabini for insulting a lady. He was sentenced to 3 months hard labour in 1921, and the following year to 8 months hard labour. Hardly had been released from a 3-month sentence imposed in 1924 when he turned his attentions to Moss Levy in February 1925. Levy had enjoyed the patronage of Alf Solomon and the Sabini family, for whom it was true that Darby Sabini knocked him out. Bennyworth had little affection. That night, as Levy strolled down Aldgate High Street, Bennyworth was in good company, which included Dodger Mullins, Ernest Watts, Stephen Martin and John Jackson. They attacked Levy like a pack of wild animals. His face was razor slashed and he was knocked to the ground and mercilessly kicked. Now, Levy provided Detective Inspector Crocker with the details of his assailants. They were arrested without trouble and all proclaimed their innocence. At the Guildhall Justice Room on the 17th of February 1925, police evidence was only given to Alderman Jenks and the prosecution was lambasted by the prisoner's friend, Mr. G. L. Hardy, for having the impudence to put his client in the dock unsupported by any testimony. He suggested that they bailed immediately. In fact, they were bailed in the not substantial sum of £500, and on the 25th of February, they appeared once more to discover, unsurprisingly, that the charges had been dropped. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, Suzanne. Now, it appeared to be business as usual. 3 months later, on the 20th of May, John Jackson hired a large blue car, a Landaulet taxi club. He used the name Mr. Dickinson from Messrs. Powell Limited at the Baker's Arms, Leytonstone, together with the driver, Albert Henry Crook, who had been supplied by the firm. They first went to the Rising Sun public house. After a half an hour, they left and visited the number of other pubs, finally arriving at the Rock, where 6 other men, including Tommy Bennyworth, George Watts, Leonard Winter and Dodger Mullins, got into the car. Jackson directed the driver to take them onto a dance hall in Windmill Street, then go to the Bouverie Club in Bouverie Street, Paddington, which they entered, and there were a number of men were attacked and robbed, Alf White being one of them. The gang returned to the car carrying a hat and 2 overcoats. They drove to Moody's Club in Tottenham Court Road, where the 2 men got into the car for about 5 minutes, and they drove to 17 Maiden Lane, the Strand, where they kicked in the door, but nothing was stolen. Now, the police were alerted, and the men drove off at high speed towards Trafalgar Square. 2 shots were fired near the junction of Edgware Road and Harrow Road. These were heard by a constable on duty at about 2 a.m, and the driver was under the impression that the shots were fired to frighten anybody who was following them. Albert Croak was directed to drive to Walworth, but then they stopped at the junction of Cambridge Street and Whitechapel Road. Croak was told to turn the car around while the men went to a coffee stall, but he seized the opportunity to drive off back to Leyton. Upon arrival there, he found that in bursts of mindless vandalism, his passengers had cut the interior of the car into pieces. Now, although Alf White was not willing to give evidence, he nevertheless provided police with the identities of his assailants. It soon became clear that apart from Alf White, the gang were looking to hand out punishment to the brothers of Alf Solomon, and although the matter was investigated by the Divisional Detective Inspector Stevens, formerly of the Flying Squad and stationed now at Bow Street, it was his erstwhile colleagues from the squad who were called in to assist. 4 days later, after the incident, Jackson and Mullins surrendered to the police, and Bennyworth and Watts were arrested. After being put up for identification, the latter 2 were picked out and charged with breaking and entering the dwelling house of Mr. Lionel Barrett of 17 Maiden Lane, the Strand, with intent to commit a felony with assaulting and robbing several men at the Bouverie Club. Now, Bow Street Police Court was told by Inspector Stevens that the case had gained a certain amount of notoriety, where he wished to place the matter before the Director of Public Prosecutions, and that he was anxious to arrest a number of the men. The prisoners were remanded in custody. The following day, Leonard Winter was arrested and said, "I admit I went with them from the Rock Public House, but I want the driver to pick me out." Mr. Crowe just did that, and Winter was charged and remanded it with the rest. The men appeared at court, and again on the 2nd of June, with evidence for the prosecution was given. G.O. Hardy was once more bellowing for the full dismissal of the charges, and after overnight considerations by the magistrate, Sir Chatteris Byron, Mr. Wallace, for the prosecution, said that he had no further evidence to offer. The magistrate said he had no doubt that there was a great deal more behind the case that had to come out. It was quite clear, he said, that the defendants were in search of one or more persons. They were, he added, a menace to the peace of London, evidently a dangerous gang who would not hesitate to employ violence, but not, of course, on this occasion. He bound the prisoner over in the sum of £100 each and required another surety in the same amount to be of good behaviour for 12 months or go to prison for 3 months. Now, the case was quoted when 6 men appeared at Birmingham Police Court on the 23rd of June 1925. This was after Thomas McDonough was attacked with an iron bar and a razor slashed from his ear to his lip. What were described as a loaded stick with 2 metal weapons were found in the pub where the men were arrested. Matters were made rather difficult for the police when McDonough told them, "It's your place to find out who did it." And it was suggested that the Sabini gang were responsible for the attack. Not so. Not only was William Kimberley a member of the Camden Town gang, he was also born in Birmingham. A year previously, he had been released from his 12-month period of the hard labour for attacking Steve Griffin with a broken glass. Perhaps it was a private quarrel, but it led to him, Moses and Isaac and Charles Kimberley, plus William Weston and William Whitehouse appearing in the dock. Although not for long, McDonough refused to give evidence. So the prosecuting solicitor suggested that the stipendiary magistrate take a leaf out of the book of his Bow Street counterpart, Sir Treacherous Byron, and bind them over. And with exception of Charles Kimberley, who was discharged, the others were bound over to keep the peace for 6 months. McDonough was charged with disturbing the peace and was offered a bind over. He promised not to attempt any reprisals in Birmingham. "You mean we'll get your own back somewhere else?" asked the clerk of the court, to which McDonough replied, "Look, I've made up my own mind. I don't care who knows it, to get my own back. You had better take care," said the magistrate, adding that McDonough would bethink better of matters presently. Since the deeply unpleasant McDonough had been previously birched and sent to hard labour for grievous bodily harm and assaulted the police, this may be a forlorn hope. Attacks were not restricted out to any one area at Walsall Police Court. George Erdis was sentenced to 3 months hard labour for attacking 2 members of a rival gang with an iron bar. This was part of a long-standing feud and coincided with the release of prison of the members of a gang who had previously been sentenced to 6 months imprisonment after attacking Edis with knives. "Don't let Walsall be turned into another Sheffield," urged the prosecuting solicitor in the case, and the magistrate intimated and that strong measures should be taken in the event of any further trouble. That wasn't very likely, with many of those who were arrested ended up being bound over to otherwise walking free from court. A classic court case was the Isaac Elbows, a London bookmaker, was on the 30th of July 1925. "Hello there, Stu. Good to see you, my man. Thank you for popping in." Had allegedly either attacked or insulted Sidney Payne, a Birmingham commission agent in Brighton's Embassy Club. Payne returned to his hotel where he was staying with Thomas Armstrong, who 4 years previously had escaped the death penalty for killing bookmaker Philip Jacobs. So Armstrong, together with Payne and fellow Birmingham boy William Glynn, returned to the club at 2:30 a.m. As the dancers were leaving, an eyewitness heard a man arguing. Blows were exchanged and there was turmoil. Someone drew a razor and there were screams followed by a free fight. There was a great alarm in the street and all of the available police in the district were rushed to the scene. Before the arrival of the police, Elbows half walked and was half carried to a car. He, together with 2 other men, Thomas Mayhew Welton and John Melville, both stewards of the club, had been brutally razor slashed. Elbows had suffered the worst injuries. When the police did arrive, they found a blood-stained razor with a broken blade in the club, and the 3 men were arrested. The matter was considered so serious that the men appeared at Brighton Police Court, charged with inflicting grievously bodily harm on Elbows. The country's chief constable personally stepped into the witness box to apply for a remand in custody, which was granted. But upon the next appearance at court on the 6th of August to answer charges of wounding Welton and Melville, matters changed dramatically. The prosecuting solicitor, Mr. Whitaker, told the bench, "You have to deal with a gang of very dangerous and violent men who terrify people," adding, "I have never heard of a more cold-blooded and ghastly attempt to maim and disfigure men from sheer spite." But Elbows, swathed in bandages, replied to almost every question, "I cannot recollect," and was treated as a hostile witness. And although the 3 men in the dock were committed for trial, they also walked free on bail. Now, the gratuitous violence was being dished out. It came to head at 10:30 p.m. on the 30th of August, 1925 at Victoria Station. A large group of drunken racegoers were returning from Gatwick races and began to argue amongst themselves. And the other train passengers, probably the worst behaved, was William Rowlett, who had vomited on the station platform. "Hello there, team. Good man. Thank you for coming, sir. Main man is here. Good to see you. Now, William Gatford, a 54-year-old Southern Railway police constable, arrived and was spoken to by 21-year-old Harry Taylor, who said, "Are you the first aid man? We don't want you." Gatford took hold of Rowlett, who was holding a broken glass tumbler, when he smashed it into Gatford's forehead. Crack. Gatford struggled with his prisoner, but was attacked by Rowlett's associate, who punched him, then threw him on the railway line, where he lost consciousness. This was witnessed by a fellow railway constable, Harry Robbins, who was attacked by James Newman and others, punching and kicking him. Police Constable Leonard Collins of the Metropolitan Police rushed in to assist Robbins when he was attacked by Rowlett. Collins drew his truncheon and stick Rowlett so severely that it as well as flattened him on the spot, and it also hospitalised him. Collins also arrested another man, but was set upon by more of the gang, who released him. Charged with causing grievously bodily harm and assaults on the police, the three men plus 17-year-old Charles Newman appeared at Westminster Police Court the following day. They made the mistake of refusing to give their fingerprints and were remanded in custody. With the exception of Charles Newman, who was discharged, the other three were found guilty on the London sessions of the assaults of 7th of October. Rowlett and Newman both had convictions for assault, and both were sent to hard labour. Rowlett for 15 months and Joseph for 12. Now, the Deputy Chairman, Mr. Lawrip, postponed sentence on James Newman, remanding him in custody until the next sessions, when he stated that James would be released under the Probation of Offenders Act on condition that he abstained from intoxicating liquor for the period of 1 year. Now, the prisoners were part of the bunch of tearaways known as the Batsy Boys, and although the trouble had started when they returned from the racetrack, they were just a bunch of drunken slags and should not only be confused with the likes of the Italian mob or the Birmingham Boys. But what had happened was all the grist of the media's mill in the 1925, the Daily Mail and the Daily Express both published lists of the gang-related outrages throughout the country, which made impressive reading for the general public. Moreover, there's nothing like a bit of public disquiet to cause the Home Secretary's spinsters to twitch, which was what was happened in this case. Okay. So there we go. Just a nice little recap there. We've got some new arrivals. Let's take a quick time just to greet those that have just come in. Hello there, Hollywood, my main man. Good to see you. Good to see you, sir. Tindu. Yeah, and Stu. Yeah, I know. Manchester United tomorrow. Joe Delamora. There you are, my main man. Pleasure to see you as always. Good stuff. Right. Now. Okay. So, Winston Churchill, well, he wrote the worst that can be said about him is that he runs the risk of being the most humorous when he wishes to be the most serious. Well, who would you know? Now, the flying squad were appointed to eradicate the race gangs, although they had been combating them for the past 6 years with limited success. There was a flurry of letters between Jix and the Brigadier General Sir William Horwood. Now, the Commissioner of Police, Horwood, was not a popular commissioner, and when he consumed a poisoned chocolate sent through the post by a lunatic named Walter Tatton, the rank and file gleeful dubbed Sir William the Chocolate Soldier. Hello there, Paulie Donuts. Thank you for coming. Now, the letters from Sir William were a great deal of help. He underplayed the disturbances point of the problems of policing, race meetings, and using the overworked press term of race gangs, pointed to the tendencies of the press to label petty disturbances race gang related. He did his best to assure the Home Secretary that many of the attacks reported in the Daily Express were exaggerated, with little evidence in many cases of any involvement by racing men. Indeed, he believed the reports of the Razor fight in Shaftesbury Avenue to be pure invention. Now, it was sufficient for the Home Secretary to tell the Commissioner, "Go on as you've been going." it appeared the courts were going on as though they'd been going as well. Now, on the 7th of December 1925, a fight broke out. A number of bookmakers had left Tattersalls. Now, England's main auctioneers of racehorses in Knightsbridge. In fact, a police constable stated there was a crowd of 300 to 400, of whom at least 20 were fighting. Two of the combatants were arrested. George Sage, who at 51 was confident enough to take on a 27-year-old costermonger named Robert William Penfold. It appeared that he had been in a betting dispute between Penfold's father and another man. In fact, the scene was so dramatic that after the two men were arrested, the fight continued. And it was not until more police, one of them a mounted officer, arrived on the scene at the crowd, and the crowd was dispersed. Whatever injuries Penfold had sustained, it was not a matter that he wished to pursue. And at Westminster Police Court, Penfold pleaded guilty to disorderly behaviour, his solicitor informing Mr. Boyd, the magistrates, that his client was a man of the highest character and very much regretted that he should be charged with an offence of that nature. Now, Sage, of course, he pleaded guilty to fighting, and they were both bound over in the sum of £10 to keep the peace for 12 months. And then something rather odd happened on the same day, that Mr. Sage and Penfold were weighed off at Westminster Police Court, a couple of miles away to the east, at the Royal Courts of Justice. The Lord Chief Justice was hearing a libel case brought by Darby Sabini on the 12th of April 1924. Now, the magazine Topical Times ran a piece to the effect that Darby had been referred to as being concerned in the operations of the Sabini gang, who were alleged to carry revolvers to terrorise bookmakers. And in particular, the article stated, no story of the turf wars could be complete without reference to one or two men whose activities had made themselves notorious. The Sabini brothers, Harry and Charles Darby Sabini, have earned themselves enough publicity. Since this was entirely accurate, Darby would have been well advised to swallow these impertinent words and say nothing, but instead he sued the newspaper for libel. Obviously, he believed that DC Thompson would cave in and be delighted to have the matter settled out of court in the earliest opportunity. If that was so, Darby thought wrong. The newspaper defended the action, claiming the defence of truth and justification. But then, seeing the writing on the wall, Darby decided to discontinue proceedings, although out of the either obstinance or tight-fistedness, he would not instruct the council for leave to withdraw the action. Hello there, James Jameson. Good to see you. You're right there. Yeah. Mad Frank just sort of come just a bit after with them. Mad Frankie Fraser. It was kind of the Sabinis. Then it was like Jack Spot and Billy Hill, and then that's when Mad Frank appeared. Now, so on the 15th of December 1925, not only did the council fail to appear at the King's Bench division, neither did Darby. Consequently, Mr. E.B. Charles, on behalf of the newspaper, asked the Lord Chief Justice for judgment upon the plea of justification. The Lord Chief Justice agreed, and furthermore ordered that Darby should pay costs, directing that because the matter appeared so serious, it should be referred to the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, Darby Sabini may have been as cunning as a fox, but when dealing with matters such as civil law, not only was he completely out of his depth, he was also profoundly stupid. And on the 11th of June 1926, the creditors for DC Thompson arrived at the London Bankruptcy Court to claim £737, the cost of the defamation proceedings. Darby had already refused to pay the sum, and he now further aggravated the situation by failing to appear. The official receiver stated that unless he put in an appearance, a warrant for his arrest would be issued on the 29th of June. He did appear and gave details of his circumstances, which were inaccurate, exaggerated, and dramatised. He laughed as he denied both being the leader of the Sabini gang and making between 20 to 30 grand per year, and said instead that was out of his weekly earnings of £8, he paid £1 and 5 shillings in travelling expenses, plus 5 shillings a day on food and drink. If he was working 5 days a week, it's difficult to see how he could have provided for himself and his family on the 10 shillings that was left. He stated that he now lived in a furnished apartment in Russell Street, Brighton, with his wife and 3 children. He had no assets, had never had any money, and could make no offer of payment for his debt. Okay. Now, the examination was concluded with Darby being declared bankrupt. Now, 3 years later, Darby was in trouble again. At Hove Greyhound Stadium, he accused the bookmaker, David Isaacs, of welshing. A fight ensued between the 2 men at a restaurant, followed by another during which Darby knocked his opponent down. At Brighton Police Court on the 28th of October 1926, when Darby was accused of assault, Isaac was asked why he had not brought any witnesses. How can I get witnesses against a man like this when everyone goes in fear of their life of him? He replied. Now, Darby, on the other hand, brought 4 witnesses to say that Isaacs was the aggressor, but for once his usual ploy failed to work. Perhaps the chairman of the bench had pursued the recent law reports because he found the case proved and fined Darby £5 with the alternative of 28 days hard labour. Now, despite the alleged absence of any absence, Darby paid up. The Sabinis had diversified, running gambling clubs in London's West End and busying themselves on the greyhound racing scene, but Darby was beginning to slide. Alf White and his family were showing a greater interest in the money available from greyhound racing, and cracks were appearing in the coalition, especially with regard to the Jewish element. Darby spent more and more time in Brighton and was becoming a spent force. Now, it's time to leave the bloodletting for a bit. Since the outbreak of gang violence on the occasions when gangsters were convicted, it had become the norm for detectives to speak up in court for them. Now, depending on which faction they supported, they would tell the open court of how this gangster or that had provided information to detriment of another criminals. But this, in my opinion, was a foolish thing to do. In those halcyon days when the police officers prosecuted at the lower court, prior to the introduction of the catastrophically inept Crown Prosecution Service, there were another ways of letting the court know of a defendant's helpfulness or not, as the case might be, but openly stating a prisoner's cooperation, not only suggesting that the man in the dock was a grass, it also hinted that in speaking up for him, that the police officer concerned was corrupt. No worries, sweetie. So it's always good to see you. Thank you for joining me. Good to see you. Good stuff. Thank you. Okay. Now, as I say, so a detective inspector's weekly wage, it meant that Darby was dispersing that amount 100 times a year. So where he and his cohorts in danger of being nicked 100 times during the space of 1 year, it's not very likely. Now, it was a boast that gangsters have used for years, so their acolytes believe they have crooked coppers by the dozen in their pockets, thereby enhancing the boss's status. Easy to say, impossible to review. Hello there, surviving together. Now, it seemed that former Detective Chief Inspector Tom Divil, who, following his retirement, policed the racetracks, ran with the hare and hunted with the hounds. Admittedly, his was a difficult job since he had no actual police powers, and although in this time he'd been very a tough cop, indeed he showed allegiance to both the Italian mob and the Birmingham boys. He described James Ford, the bald-headed former boxer with a shocking record who had been recently been released from a 6-month sentence for wrecking the New Avenue Club, as being a decent fellow, a reformed character, and now had a freehold house and was earning a lucrative living. Precisely what that living was. Divil neglected to say he was a little premature in his effusiveness, as will be seen. Following a savage attack in 1928, Ford collected another 2-month sentence. Following the racing at Hawthorne Hill, when Divil was surrounded by some toughs who appeared intent on killing him, he praised Darby for knocking one of his adversaries to the ground, which diffused the situation. At Doncaster, an ugly situation arose between some miners and bookmaker clerks. On that occasion, it was Billy Kimber who poured oil on the troubled waters, telling Divil afterwards that his actions saved him from any trouble or worry, and it was Kimber and George Sage to whom Dibble appeared to side with, especially after Sage had helped him quiet some rowdy behaviour, and that later praised both men who on separate occasions had been attacked by the Italian mob. Now, just to show what generous fellows Sage and Kimber were, they would not only give evidence, they would not give any evidence or information against their antagonists, and stated they would sooner die than send men to prison. Nevertheless, Scotland Yard and the Home Secretary received a number of anonymous letters highlighting gangsters' activities, also castigating police officers. And in September, on October the 22nd, the then home of Secretary Edward Short received letters signed Tommy Atkins, which is a pseudonym of one of those along the lines of a lover of justice, a British ratepayer and an Englishman, all of which had a jingoistic flavour, castigating Jews and those of Italian extraction. The first letter in all its illiteracies read as follows: "The financer and the brains of the gang of the cutthroats on the racecourses of England are foreigners, named Edward Emmanuel and Brummagen Hammers. These two men finance all the large clubs and the gambling houses in the West End of London, and they pay large sums of money to other foreigners, the Sabini gang, also the flying squad of Scotland Yard, to safeguard their interests." Chief Inspector Brown inserted an advertisement in the personal column of the Daily Express, urging Tommy Atkins to arrange an interview to discuss his grievances, and 3 days later, although it looks like though Mr. Atkins failed to make a personal appearance, he sent a further letter in which he suggested ways to reconstruct your evidence against this wild foreign murderous band of Italian Jews. 8 months later, another letter, this one completely anonymous, was received, again targeting Emmanuel and referring to a number of police officers who kept him company, particularly in the Titchbourne Club in Edgware Road. A further letter, similarly anonymous, arrived after the incident at Mornington Crescent, when the Italian faction shot at George Sade and Fred Gilbert. It is rather confused and contradictory because of Alf White, George West and Joseph Sabini were among the aggressors, and the writer seems to suggest that one of the English faction, probably White, should not have been arrested, saying, "And what it is, more the police are against him for why? Because he happens to be an Englishman. If he had been Italian, there would have been no notice of the charge." Of course, the writer may have been referring to Sage and Gilbert, but remanded in custody on the blackmailing charge, and then the victim was Jewish, not Italian. As it appeared, all rather confusing, and it was of one discount the writer's illiteracy. Perhaps it was meant to be. Now, 1 month later, another letter arrived. This was signed Timewell Force, a reference to the Royal Commission in 1906. A committee known as the Police and Public Vigilance Society had been set up to investigate the police malpractice under the auspices of James Timewell, who instructed Earl Russell to act on their behalf. The peer described Timewell as a fanatic, prepared always to believe anything he was told against the police and to resent and some indignation, the demand for proof which a lawyer always makes. Timewell had been assisted by Arthur Harding, a vicious, vindictive and thoroughly unscrupulous criminal who had acquired a thin veneer of education, read some law books, and by own account managed to get himself acquitted on 27 occasions. Harding was a contradiction in terms. He had a loathing for the police in general and the flying squad, in particular since the squad was the brainchild of Fred Wensley, who also his bitterest enemy. However, he was also a self-confessed snout for the post-Second World War Ghost Squad because the letter was reasonably literate. It is possible that Harding was its author, and it mentioned the shooting in Gray's Inn Road and the association between Detective Rutherford and Sabini's. Now, in part, it read, "I first of all refer to the shooting case in the Italian colony, where Rutherford was supposed to have been shot at. He was drinking with these men in a certain public house, and words which were passed by the famous detective and these loafers in the betting world. The shots were among themselves and not in any direction for this drunken detective and one of the flying squad." Now, a 12-page report was commissioned for the Home Office in which these allegations were dismissed one by one. If Harding was the author of the letter, he got his comeuppance a few years later when he was followed from St Pancras to Leytonstone High Road by Detective Sergeant Dan Gooch of the flying squad, who arrested him for being a suspected person. With a considerable amount of evidence against him, Harding pleaded guilty at Stamford Police Court on the 12th of April 1928 and was sentenced to 3 months hard labour. John Rutherford came in for another hammering on the 27th of November 1928. A tailor named Montague Lester was savagely attacked at the Horseshoe Hotel in Tottenham Court Road by James Ford and his brother Harry and James Paul. This was as the result of the race gang feud, which had originated in Manchester. It was said that Rutherford and other officers were present, but did nothing to stop the attack. Hello there, Maureen. Thank you for coming. Good to see you. Now, although it was quite possible that due to the number of people present, it was not possible to do so. The trio escaped, and the brothers Ford then went on to attack a commission agent, Charles Ricketts, in a first-class compartment of a race train at Paddington. This latter charge was dismissed by the magistrate at Bow Street Police Court on the 23rd of February 1929. But the prosecution of the first charge came in for fierce criticism from Mr. Lawrence Vine for the defence. He stated that the case had been much exaggerated and complained that the matter had been taken out of the hands of the local police and entrusted to a flying squad officer, Detective Sergeant Frederick Nutty Sharp. Now, this said Mr. Lawrence was because Sharp held a grudge against the Fords due to one of them having complained about him to his superiors. Sharp replied that he had no knowledge of such complaint. Of course, there could have been a modicum of truth in those assertions, since Sharp was not one to forgive or forget of a slight. Earlier in his career, the squad officer Sharp had arrested a pickpocket at Earl's Court tube station and got his struggling prisoner into the lift. 5 of the pickpocket's associates crowded in behind him, attacked Sharp with so much force he was knocked unconscious and made good their escape together with the prisoner. Sharp made it his business to identify them and trace, and within a year he had arrested all 6 men. However, it was not pure vindictiveness that prompted Sharp's involvement in the matter. Racetrack gang feuding was the flying squad's prerogative, and James Ford, who had served 2 months for shooting at the Albany Street 8 years earlier, now received another 2-month sentence, while James Paul got 1 month, and Ford's brother received a £25 fine. Sharp, an ex-miner who once had himself nailed up in a packing case, complete with eye holes, had delivered to a warehouse that was experiencing thefts, was not only as hard as nails, he was also a dedicated race goer who combined business with pleasure. As head of the flying squad, he received information that a wanted criminal would be attending at Newark races. Resplendent in top hat and a cutaway with binoculars slung back his neck, Sharp stepped into his 4.5-litre flying squad Bentley, but told his driver, Police Constable George Sharp, to drive first to the King's Cross railway station, where a race special train was due to leave at 9 o'clock. He walked slowly down the platform, looking in every carriage, and as soon as he spotted known card shops, he opened the carriage door and told them to clear off. None demurred, returning to the Bentley, which then purred away in the direction of Newmarket. Sharp spent a successful and lucrative day at the races, pausing on his way back to the yard, only to deposit his prisoners in the cells at Cannon Road Police Station. Ted Greeno was another tough flying squad officer who, like Sharp, possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of the gangs who frequented racetracks. He was usually disinclined to accept any kind of abuse, be it verbal or physical, from anybody. I've given some villains some awful hidings, he once said, without any hint of contrition. 2 of the clients were Jack Dodger Mullins and Timmy Hayes. Both were pieces of dread from London's East End, who were simply mindless thugs. By the time he was 23, Hayes had been convicted on 10 occasions. 3 of them for wounding, one of them for kicking, biting and punching police officers. At the time, in November 1914, Hayes, together with William Driscoll, were sentenced to 3 months hard labour for pickpocketing. At one stage, Mullins, a small man with a razor-scarred face, had been dragged at daggers drawn with Alf White, but he and Hayes were opportunist thugs, sometimes working with gangs, sometimes alone. And on one particular occasion together, when they were each sentenced to 3 years imprisonment for warehouse breaking, Mullins was mentioned several times in this narrative. Now it's time to take a closer look at him. Dodger became fed up with a woman that he was living with and pushed her out of a window. His supporters argued that the window was not very far from the ground. Indeed, it wasn't, but it was a car window that the unfortunate woman was ejected from. And at the time, the vehicle was travelling at a considerable speed. Now, according to East End legends, Dodger was caught at Epsom Downs, where he was arrested and was affected by a copper who punched him in the face with a knuckle duster. Whether or not this account was true, some readers will be relieved to hear that the mode of arrest was now been discontinued by the Metropolitan Police. I'm trying unsuccessfully to extort money from a Billard hall owner. Mullins and Hayes smashed the place up. The Greeno single-handedly arrested them both for blackmail. At the Old Bailey on the 2nd of July 1926, Mullins said that the case had been got up by the Sabinis and the Yiddish mob to get them off the streets, but the jury disagreed and both were sentenced to 4 years penal servitude, with Hayes receiving a further 5 years preventive detention for being an habitual criminal. But Dodger was unstoppable. No sooner was he released, he, brothers George and Charles Stedman, motor driver and news vendor respectively, and 31-year-old Henry Richard Barton, also a motor driver, and Jack Sangers, a clerk, together with 5 others, burst into the Argus Club, Soho, on the 25th of January 1930, demanding drinks. Although they were told by the club secretary, John Lewis, that it was too late, they adopted a threatening attitude and were duly served. Mullins then demanded to know if there were any raddies in the club. Lewis was seized and dragged into a club room where they spotted one Angelo Costa Ganetti. And in the absence of any other raddies, they decided he would do. This band of heroes tore into the unprotected young man, punching, kicking, hitting him with coshes and chair legs. As Costa Negri lay on the floor, Mullins got hold of him by his waistcoat and with his other hand ruthlessly wielded a cosh. The mob was shouting, "Kill him! Burn him!" And witnesses said that all of them were hitting him with something. His clothes were literally torn off from his body, glasses were smashed, and one of the gang was flourishing a revolver. I said that Costa Ganetti was unprotected, but one person did try to come to his assistance, and that was Edith Milburn. And she clung to the feet of the men kicking the Italian, screaming to the club secretary, "Stop them, Jack, stop them!" She was manhandled and badly assaulted, and Lewis seized the opportunity to leave the club to telephone for an ambulance. And the police, when he returned, he was confronted by Mullins, Barton, and another man. "Where have you been, Jack?" asked Mullins. Lewis replied, "I've just phoned for the ambulance." "Have you not been to the police?" asked Mullins. Lewis replied, "No." "Are you sure?" asked Mullins. Then added chillingly, "I hope you've not spouted against me. God help you if you have. You know I'm a thick 'un, and you know what it means for me. I shall do you if you have." It was unfortunate the gang were released on bail. It afforded Mullins and Barton the opportunity to see Costa Ganetti in the pub at King's Cross. Lewis too was threatened. When the courageous quartet next appeared at Marlborough Street Police Court on the 18th of February 1930, Costa Ganetti gave evidence. He identified Mullins as one of the gang. But when Mullins stood up in the dock, Costa Ganetti could not swear that he was one of the attackers. Furthermore, he had been seen that the men before the night in question, he did not know any grudge that they might have against him, and that was more the men who attacked him than those in the dock. Now, Lewis gave his evidence and asked police protection, saying he was afraid of the men. At the conclusion of the day's proceedings, Mr. Dummett, the magistrate, refused to consider bail, telling Lewis, "You have been given your evidence courageously. They will not molest you, as they are in custody. If any of their charming friends approach you in any way, let the police know at once, and they will do their utmost to protect you." Now, 1 week later, the case resumed, with the defence doing their best to discredit Lewis. Although he had the name Lewis for 15 years, he admitted his baptismal name was Maurice Gorsh. He denied being the promoter or one of the proprietors of the club, saying that the man named Robinson was the owner. He denied that he had ever been under observation as a mental case or that he had concocted this highly coloured story. When the matter of bail was raised, Divisional Detective Inspector John Horwell stated that in the interest of the justice, bail should not be allowed, and it wasn't. But with the little effect, on the 5th of May 1930, all the prisoners were found not guilty at the Old Bailey and were discharged. Still, there was a little light on the horizon. 20 years later, Jack Sangers was cut to pieces by Billy Hill, and later in 1930, Mullins tried to tap his old comrade Arthur Harding for £2 and verbally abused Harding's wife when it was refused. Whenever the code of the East End is mentioned, Harding can properly be omitted. As well as being a grass for the Ghost Squad, he propped Mullins up to the police for demanding money with menaces and saw him sentenced to 6 years penal servitude. In an effort to add credibility in his outrageously untruthful and inaccurate memoirs, he whined, "His people straightened me up. They gave my wife £50 or 60, so I was lenient in my evidence." But by the time Dodger passed on in 1967, having escaped punishment for the 1932 Dartmouth Mutiny, he had notched up several hundred court appearances and 51 convictions, the last in 1956 for the improbable offence of pickpocketing at the age of 64. Now, even though Jicks had appointed the flying squad to get rid of the racecourse gangs, they had an enormous area to cover, and naturally, not every racecourse could be policed, nor could they be necessarily contended with the trouble that broke out. Often the gangs would be tailed by the flying squad vehicles out of London, and once they had determined the route the gang was likely to have taken a particular racecourse, the information would be relayed to the yard, who in turn would telephone the constabulary concerning in order that their local office could be sent to the racecourse. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So preventive measures were taken. At a racecourse where trouble was expected, one of the squad's well-known costly tenders would be ostentatiously parked at the entrance as a warning to the gangsters. At other times, it would be the duty of a lone detective to forestall any trouble. One such was my friend, the late Detective Superintendent Bob Higgins, who, as a detective sergeant with the flying squad in the 1930s, was on duty at Goodwood when he received information that Noel Bob were on their way to the racecourse by coach. He intercepted the coach as it drew up and told the driver to return to London or else. The Noel Bob spokesman told him, "We didn't mean any offence, Gov," and they went. These were the men who were like Henry Chesty Corbett of the squad, spent their mornings attending the police courts to see who was appearing before the beat, just as important, who was accompanying them, as well as memorising their faces. Corbett, who at 1/8 of an inch over the minimum height limit of 5'8", which was almost as broad as tall, and would maintain a lone patrol on foot at night and arrest pickpockets, 4, 5, and sometimes 6-handed. He was aided by his enormous physical strength, reinforced by working out with a chest expander at 56-pound weight on a daily basis. And he told a colleague, "They can't get away from me once I lay my hands on them." So there were some of the flying squad officers who knew their adversaries cracked down hard on them, but that successes brought the allegations of malpractice, as we've seen, and in 1930 in particular, Craven Letter, one of the most vicious gang members. Okay. I'm just going to thank you for bearing with me. I'm just going to have a break. It's going to run over the hour. And then I'm going to finish this off. So thank you, everyone in the chat. I'm just, as I say, just going to stay with me. Good stuff. Okay. All right, okay. On the morning of 8 Feb 1930, the Director of Public Prosecutions wrote to Sir Trevor Bigham, the Assistant Commissioner, enclosing a letter which he had just received and asking Sir Trevor to take whatever action he might think right for reasons which will readily occur to you. So the letter Read, Sir, in November 1924, I was charged at the Old Bailey with murder and was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 3 years penal servitude. Another charge of grievously bodily harm was put on the file. I served my sentence and was released. Since being released, I have got a respectable livelihood on the race courses, betting, and never been in trouble since and do not want to get in any. I am earnestly asking for your advice and protection under these strange circumstances. A month ago, I happened to go to Clapton dog races for the first time. After racing, I went into a bar with a man named Bernie Dorry, who owns and runs dogs there. A conversation was overheard while having a drink. A man named Looper took the biggest part in this, and he is a confidential friend of Superintendent Brown, who were always to be seen together. On leaving the Clapton Stadium, this particular night, I was followed by a gang of men with Looper. The leader, under the protection of Inspector Pride, I was followed through a number of turnings. My life was threatened by a gang who is remanded at Marlborough Street, who Dodger Mullins is the head. I can't say that Inspector Pride was there, but when he was in the stadium drinking with them till 11 o'clock at night, the words I heard used that night was, "Let's do him." And we've got a big fight behind us now. The appeal I am making to you is that Man Looper is working under protection of Superintendent Brown. What protection have I got? If necessary to hold on to the inquiry into this affair, I'm quite willing to come and give evidence in front of you, as I've got further news to tell you that will surprise you, and I could bring you witnesses, hoping that you will give me your protections. I don't know which way to turn. Yours faithfully, Alfred Solomon. Ooh. Now, the matter referred to regarding Mullins was this. 3 weeks before the letter was written, he and 4 others had been arrested following an incident at the Argos Club in Soho's Greek Street, where Angelo Cascanetti had been very badly injured indeed. But the usual amount of intimidation ensued, and as was recounted on the 5th of May 1930, Mullins and co. walked free from the Old Bailey. So that was the position. Solomon, a violent, murderous, out-of-control thug, transforming himself into a victim with the half promise of becoming an informant. The best person to deal with this matter was the Superintendent William Brown, mentioned in the letter, and a very different picture soon emerged. Early in February 1930, an anonymous telephone call revealed that the police could anticipate trouble at several dog racing tracks in London, including Clapton, between 2 race gang thugs, one led by Alf Solomon and the other led by a crazy associate, Dodger Mullins. And the divisional detective inspectors of the Metropolitan Police Divisions concerned were accordingly alerted. On the evening of the 7th of February, Al Solomon, Jack Berman and others had gone to the dog track at Clapton, where they tried to extort money from bookmakers. Solomon was seen in the club and was requested to leave the club manager. Mr. Looper was eventually ejected, and on the evening of the 18th of February, the day after Solomon's letter was sent, Mr. Looper and his wife visited Wembley Stadium dog racing track, whereupon the gang attacked him and Berman hit him with an iron bar. This led to Berman being sentenced for 2 months imprisonment and being bound over to keep peace for 6 months in the sum of £100. There is no doubt that Looper was Brown's informant, and being both a licensed victualler and manager of the dog track, he was well placed to act as such. So it became clear that Solomon wanted the 2 main adversaries out of the way, diverting the attention of the police from him. Now, making them concentrate on keeping Dodger Mullins and the Bethnal Green boys under observation, while making damaging allegations against Brown. There was certainly no love lost between Solomon and Brown, since Brown had been the officer in the case when Solomon stood trial for murder. Solomon had displayed considerable antipathy towards him, as Brown mentioned in his report. It was generally considered at the time he was exceedingly fortunate not to have been convicted of the capital charge. Brown was in no doubt that the letter was written out of spite, adding in this report that several days before the letter was sent, Solomon had boasted to his contemporaries that he intended to send it. In forwarding his report to the AC, Brown attached a list of Solomon's court appearances, adding, "He's a very dangerous rascal and his enemies are far more in need of protection than he is." And that was the matter ended. Although Darby Sabini appeared to have retired to Brighton and Hove, the Sabini flag was still being waved. In January 1935, 5 or 6 men, one was Harry Sabini and another was James Sabatini, entered the Majestic Social Club, Wardle Street, looking for 2 men who were referred to as Baby, but this was quite possibly Antonio Mancini. However, it was him. Must have been a falling out because 11 years previously, Mancini had been one of those who had been taking the blame for a racetrack bashing in order to let Harry Sabini off the hook. Then again, the alliances between the racetrack gangsters could be and often were broken. Sabini had told the proprietor, Jack Aaron Iso, the details of the men they were looking for, whom they wanted to bail, and Harry added, "It was my intention that you get rid of these two. Unless you do it for the cost of £200, we'll come down on you." Iso knew that this was no idle threat because the same gang had previously smashed up the club which had been associated. In fact, he had been obliged to close it because members were frightened away. And on the 29th of April 1935, just before midnight, a group of men, which included Sabatini, Thomas Mack, Sidney Buoncourt, and Michael Tiano, aggressively barged into the club. And because they were not members, Iso told them to leave. Buoncourt shouted, "You fucking well ruined Harry boy, and we're going to ruin you. We warned you a few months ago," said Mac. "As you haven't carried out our warning, we've come to enforce it," and added, rather than illogically, "You better go and bring the police." Isaac looked for the key in order to lock the men in the premises, but found it missing. However, he telephoned the police. When he returned, he discovered 7 windows, some crockery, a lampshade, and a table in the card room that had been smashed. The evidence was quite a bit more was given by the witness at Bow Street Police Court, and on the 1st of May, before Sir Rollo Graham Campbell, the case was remanded. Unfortunately, all of the accused were admitted to bail. When the case resumed on the 20th of May, the situation became farcical. During the initial previous appearance, the doorman, David Godfrey, said that when the men had entered the club, he was pushed against a table, and he told the court the members were rushing about and didn't know what to do. The noise was so terrible. These men were like a lot of animals. I'd never seen human beings behave like that. The members flew for their lives. When I got out an opportunity, I flew myself. 19 days later, Godfrey retracted his evidence, declared that his accused were absolutely innocent. Asking who had broken the windows, Godfrey replied, "Mr. Iso might have broken them himself. I don't know," he added, that Iso had promised him a better job and a new suit if he would give evidence against the defendants, but he had gone to the defence solicitors and made a statement to them because I wanted to get it off my conscience. Not unnaturally, he was treated as a hostile witness, but when his statement to the police was read out in court, he said that he'd been bullied into making it. "No one ran out of the club panic-stricken," he said. "1 or 2 walked out. There was no fighting." He asked, "Did you run out panic-stricken?" Godfrey artlessly replied, "Me? No, I took a walk." The craven Mr. Godfrey was not alone. John Rosenborg, an assistant at the club, was originally said that Max struck him, Antiano and Sabatini. They tried to. Now he said that he didn't know who had hit him. Asked to explain the bruises that a doctor had found on his arm, he lamely replied, "Perhaps I might have knocked myself." Morris Copper, a tailor who also changed his evidence, he was treated as a hostile witness. He now said a cup was thrown through the window of the card room. Other windows were broken and 2 men jumped on the table where he was playing cards. Someone punched him, but he could not say who, since he was under the table. In cross-examination, Copper insisted he was not terrified of anyone, but he was contradicted by Detective Sergeant Wakelin, who told the court that Copper was told that he was afraid of having his throat cut. Antonio Amadeo said that one of them statements, which had been sworn in support of the application for an arrest warrant, were inaccurate, and while the prosecution wanted to call another witness, they had been unsuccessful in their attempt to find and serve a subpoena on him to secure his attendance. The defence stated the whole case had been manufactured by Iso, that there was not a scrap of evidence against the foreman, and that if the case should go to trial, 8 witnesses would be called by the defendants had left the club prior to the trouble starting. It would have been laughable, but for the seriousness of the matter, in the event, each defendant was bound over in the sum of £200, with a surety that in the same amount to come up if the judgment come up for judgment, if called upon to do so within 12 months, to pay the cost of £38 and not to visit the club premises ever again. So there, It appeared quite clear when witnesses could be bribed or intimidated, those racetrack gangs on or off the track could do pretty well as they pleased. Alf White and his son certainly thought so. Okay. Right, everyone. Hey, Kid Rock. Now I just want to spend some time with you. I know there's been a lot of information and the reading that I have been sort of the information I've been firing at you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to anyone of you that's in the chat, if you would like to ask me any questions regarding it. Kid Rock, good to see you, my man. Do you know what, Kid Rock? I hope you're in a position, because I know that we've been up on the other panels quite a few times. I want to chat to my old mate, Kid Rock. There's a link there for that anyone who wants to join me. I'd like to see if Kid Rock's available. I hope you've enjoyed that. I know there's a lot to process, and it's very hard when it's done in sections. But I hope you've been given some insight. As we know with the Sabinis now, he started to retire because he goes down to Brighton and retires. And you've got the Alf Whites and you've got the Billy Hills that are coming on. I'll put it in the chat, Kid Rock. So it's just going to come up. I hope you're all having a lovely weekend. Thank you, Suzanne. I really appreciate you all being here. You, Delilah, Maureen, Joe. Got quite a good few of you here. I'm just waiting for Kid Rock. Dave T. Thank you, Maureen. Good stuff. James Jameson. Right, here we go. Hello, my man. How you doing? Good to see you.
Hey James, what's up? I just got the end of it of your program. Sorry about that. I haven't been I've been sick lately, and so I just jumped in. So how you
No,
doing,
it's
bud?
all right. I'll just give you a quick overview. Basically, this was covering the racetrack gangs in Britain, and I've sort of covered just after the First World War.
Right.
In the UK, gambling, certainly sports betting, has been legal for many years, but back then it wasn't, and it was in the same sort of situation as you've got in America, that you could only bet at the racetracks or the race grounds. Like, you can't have betting shops everywhere. I know the
Well,
gambling
yeah,
laws in America started
because
to,
it would be controlled, and they could get the taxes and all that. Right.
yeah. So that's what it was. How it is in the States now is how it was back then. And so what would happen is these gangs went round to all these different race meetings, and they'd basically, extort and intimidate the bookies, and they would offer them protection. So
Right.
subsequently, what came from that was wars for turf. And this focusing, as you know, that the community we've got, its majority of is Italian, and we've got it's the Sabini gang, and they were kind of in British, I don't know, the underworld history. We haven't had too many Italian, but in this particular era, around the 1920s, we had the Sabini, who were the most famous, along with the Cortese brothers that hailed from Italy.
All right. Oh, hey, James, hold on one second. Sorry. I don't have my other phone, so if I can't see the chat, so I wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah,
say hello to the chat. So like I can't see you. Okay, sorry, James. Go ahead, buddy.
yeah, yeah. So that's what this was focusing on. There was also it was raining the Sabinis and them how they run for that, just so like that decade. Charles Sabini is the most notorious. I don't know if you've seen the Peaky Blinders at all. Right?
Oh no, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, it's the one where Cillian Murphy, that famous actor who's been in big films. It's based around a gang that wear them hats, based from Birmingham, and what they've written a story around it along the way. I can't remember if it's in season 1 or season 2. Features a story around Charles Sabini that they've written.
Oh, okay, right.
So yeah, he did there because the thing is, I wanted to do something a bit different. I wanted to do something for the peoples that come here and the chats that
Well,
I
yeah,
go
you
in.
gotta, we talked about this before. Your interest and see if they like it, and then you could, grow your channel. That's the way to go. You
Yeah,
get more
absolutely.
people to see. James, you're doing great.
Good stuff. Thank you, Kid Rock. How you be anyway? Are you getting in your channel up and going, or are you just happy at the moment?
I don't know, man. I mean, I like remember I took my vacation and everything, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's just everyone's gone mad. Okay, on the real. I mean, but there's a lot of crash dummies out there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I will be honest. Like, if I had a channel a long time ago, I probably would have went crazy.
No, absolutely, mate.
You know what I mean?
Kid Rock, I'm just going to answer this question that I've got on the screen from
Oh, okay,
Delilah.
hold on. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, she just asked, is this a strong Italian organised crime presence in the UK? No, not really, Delilah. We've had pockets of what were some of the Calabrians, but it hasn't. There hasn't been none of the Sicilians. Hello there, Cheech. Good to see you. I don't know why it is a lot of Italian that they went to the more warmer places like America
Well,
and also in Australia and places like that, but they never really,
yeah, but they
never really
go where
stayed.
the money's at, though. Like England had money,
Well,
and
it's
everyone
like
likes to gamble. You know what I mean? So it's not. It's. I mean, the weather is good. I mean, that's a plus. But if there's money involved, there'll be someone there.
well, it's not only that as well. What also dictates as well is the landscape of the politics of the landscape. So in America, you had the Prohibition era, which enabled a lot of them. So you had the booze, right?
Right.
You've had gambling that's been illegal for many years, which the fills the vacuum, doesn't it? So
Right.
when in England, the booze has always been legal. The gambling sort of changed quite quickly. So a lot of them, there weren't really them sort of holes to try and exploit, you know.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, just America was a preferred destination, I suppose, because a lot of them left, like the Irish did. A lot of them left and went to America to start new lives because the work wasn't around. So they went off to the States, but a lot, you tend to get they moved to Canada as well, whereas a lot of the Calabrians settled in Canada and places like Australia as well.
Right.
But Joe Delamora would be able to vouch from what I said because obviously Joe he's based in the UK and he'll have a better idea around the Italian culture in the UK than me. But that's from my knowledge.
Okay, James. Question now: when was gambling like legal in England?
Well, so that
Like
was the
for
'90s.
like betting sports and stuff. I'm saying.
Sport. Well, good question. As I say, during the 1920s, there you could do it only at the racetrack.
No, no, no. I'm saying now here in England.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to find out for you.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if you understood my question. Okay, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No worries. I'll do it in the UK.
Like baseball, gambling, football, whatever.
Yeah, the Betting and Gaming Act, the 1960 Betting and Gaming Act, paved the way for legalised casino gambling in the UK. So horse racing, 18th century, and we want the 20th century. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The betting in the 60s, and so the 60s is when it started to happen.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, because like how, like in the states, like if you were in certain states, like a long time ago, it depending how people were getting paid off, it would be easier to gamble and stuff.
Yeah,
But you know what I mean? And there's 50 states, so you know how that goes. And then well, see, and then what they do instead of like people now it's legalized, but people don't realize that like they're the mob. they're taking all the money and,
Yeah, exactly. Or
then getting their taxes too.
well, they're the biggest criminal organisation is the government, because you've got everyone's got to kick up to them.
Yeah,
Everyone.
they're the bank, and then like you can't do it like when like you use your phone, like the like the betting apps and stuff. So yeah, you can't, you know what I mean? And then they got you. Like I know one thing in Vegas. I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas, but like if you win like a couple, let's say you win 10 grand, the
Yeah,
IRS is right there. You can't like when you like now it's like digital, but you would go up to get your money. The IRS person is right there in the casino. They
yeah,
take your money, like they take it right off the thing. So if you won 10 grand, we'll just say they'll take a third. Well,
yeah.
I'm making it up, a
Well,
third.
it's funny you should say it, because Suzanne just asked a question. She said, but lotto
Oh,
tickets were probably allowed before, right, James? Well, funny enough, saying that, Suzanne, we never had a lottery. We didn't have a lottery until the 90s. We used to have a thing where the pools man used to come around, used to do the pools, and they'd knock on your door, they'd hand you a script, and basically what it'd be a list of all the football fixtures from the first division down to the fourth division in the Vauxhall Conference, and you would basically pick X amount, and you would decide whether it was a win, loss, or draw. And it was as hard to win like the lottery, and you won the pools. You won £1 million. But as soon as the
right.
lottery was introduced in the 90s, that died out, and everyone plays the lotto tickets now. The positive thing about the lotto tickets in the UK and in Europe is you win the jackpot. That's said there. You don't pay taxes on that. Now I know that your Powerball and all those others,
Oh wow.
like it's like they might say 50 billion, but then they'll come along and take 20. The feds take 25%. Then the state pay as another tax, and the
And
tax
then if
rates
you
go
got
down.
any liens or anything, they get their thing. Well, just say like remember like a while. I think we talked about a while ago. Like if the $1 billion lotto, right? The lottery, the Mega Millions or whatever it was,
Yeah.
you would get like this say it's $1 billion and you won it. If you're the single winner, you're lucky to get five.
Was it just tax? Is it just tax?
Well,
Is
like
it?
500 million. You know what I mean? Because yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna tax you big time. And
Yeah.
well, yeah, I don't know. There's another thing too. Like back in like beginning of the 1900s and stuff, they had a in the United States, like they had like you heard about the numbers, right? They had
Yeah.
like their own lottery thing, like the mob and stuff. And what they did was whatever the last three numbers of the market was. Did you ever
Yeah.
hear that? Like in the newspaper back in the 20s,
Oh, right.
1920s.
So yeah, so you as long as you got that, they had like a little side lottery on the streets, whereas
Right,
it was the
right.
last three
And the
numbers
number,
of the sixth
yeah,
number.
the last three numbers of like the Dow Jones or whatever it was, that
Yeah.
would be that would be the number that would be like the official number if you won or not. The last three
Okay.
digits of that.
Okay. Cool. Cool. So yeah,
I mean, that
at
was
least you
pretty
got
smart
better
back then if
odds.
you thought about it. So it wasn't like it was rigged because they can't have like the ball, you know what I mean, spinning the thing and stuff. It would be in the paper. You get
Yeah.
them.
Of course.
Everyone got a newspaper, and you looked at the thing, and the last few numbers would be the numbers for that day.
Here we go.
That's pretty smart.
Cheech has just mentioned. He said that between the taxes and the lump sum, the lotto takes almost half. Wow.
Well, yeah. See, that's another thing too. Like when we have our government shutdowns, like every couple of years, people don't realize if you won a lot of money and you did installment payments, they would you wouldn't get your money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you had like like they say every year you would get $5 million, we'll just say you
Yeah.
would have that paused because that's part through the government. You know what I mean? So I would just take that right away.
Yeah.
I would get the one lump sum.
But because so the tax is heavier on the lump sum, because they're crafty, because they know that there's no way that they're gonna say no, just pay me it in dividends over my lifetime, because people get greedy and they go, I want it, it's mine, I want it now, and that's where they smash you,
Yeah,
because
and then they want you dead.
well,
So
exactly, and not only right is if you do take it over a period of time. Cheers, Paulie. Thank you for coming, sir. You're right. As soon as you die, they'll take it. They'll take the rest that's not been paid out to you. So it's
And then your family has to fight the government. That's really good, right? You going against the government, like they just continue, like a continuance, like in courts. They can just keep doing that, and every time you go to court, I don't know what the money situation was, but it would add up. Like lawyers and stuff cost money. You know what I mean? So that's how they get you too. Just say if you had you didn't have a will. Just say I was 40 years old and it was a freak accident and I won it, but then 5 years later, I was killed in a car crash, and I did, obviously it was I didn't think about a will because I was young still. You would have a lot of problems trying to get that money, especially if there was no will, because some people wait, and if you're in your 40s, you're still young, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then you got to fight the government, and you might not have no money. So
well, this is it. They'll just do it in every which way they want to get money out of you. The UK's been terrible. I mean, we pay tax on everything,
right?
A lot of countries like Ireland and places like that are freaking. They freaked out when they started introducing things like council tax and other taxes. And I'm like that here with my relatives, and we've been paying that for years.
What's council tax?
Yeah, council tax. So basically, what that is you pay a tax. It's over a year, and it's depending on what your profit is. In fairness, that's a tax that you pay in America, similar.
Right, okay.
You pay tax if you buy a property in America. You pay a tax, don't you, to the state every year?
Right.
So which is what we do. But that tax is meant to pay for your waste management. So the
cops and the fire department and stuff like that.
Yeah, or the electricity bill for the street lights at night and all that sort of stuff.
And the water, right. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, so it's meant to be for that, but they, at the end of the day, that your tax they dip into that tax money and use it for other stuff.
Oh, well, you see the stuff that's going on in the States, right? All this nonsense, giving all this money to countries, and I don't know if you want to get into that, so I don't want to talk about it on your show because, but you see what's going on in the United States, right?
Yeah, I've seen what's going on.
And all the money they're stealing.
And I don't mind saying it. I don't believe we were giving still giving aid to countries like India, who've got their own space program. They're not a country that needs money. If you got a rival to NASA, why would you know? And I tell you what, a lot of it is why they still give all this money out is because as long as they're handing out money, they can still influence the politics in those countries.
And then they get the money back and ship back. Yeah. You know how the money's going. It says it's going here, and it's a little piece is going there, if any, and then it's coming back, and everyone's stealing the money, pretty much. And that's why all these people are going crazy. The Democrats and stuff. And like I said, I'm not I don't want how I feel about that, but and then The View, you know The View, right? Those people. Well, I seen this the other day. They were going crazy. I didn't see it. It was a clip show, right? Yeah. And it said, "Oh my God, they're lying about the money." They said because I don't know if you heard, $50 million was allocated to what's it called? Hold up a second. To Gaza for condoms. Okay. And The View was going crazy. No, that's wrong. They're lying. Guess what? Okay, he got one thing wrong. It wasn't Gaza. It was Mozambique in Africa.
This is what I mean.
It wasn't the number wasn't wrong. It was the wrong. It wasn't the Gaza Strip. It was Mozambique, Africa.
The thing is, Kid Rock, is they give the money to these countries, and the corrupt governments pocket it.
Right, for sure.
It's not like the people see any of it, really. It's a whole.
Well, yeah, they get they might get 10%. If that, on the real. Because everyone's just greedy. I mean, it's greedy is a natural thing. We all had it in our lives once or twice or many times. But I mean, come on, how much money do people need?
Well,
I mean, I'm talking
exactly.
about these people like the Democrats stealing, and the Republicans too. You know, I mean, I don't trust none of them. You ask me.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it's what it's always been. As I say, and like I know when with Trump coming in, I think someone made a statement saying, the people are now getting what they vote for. There's too many. Same with Britain, is you're voting in a government with a manifesto because you like the things that they say that they're going to do, and when they get in, you've got shadowy figures behind the scene who change it all because it doesn't suit whatever the agenda, if it's globalism. But then your country is no longer a democracy; it's a bureaucracy.
right?
So
But yeah. So yeah, I seen a thing. I don't know if you've seen this the other day. JD Vance was talking to the European Union or something. I don't know what it was, but was mostly the
yeah,
European.
so,
Yeah, it might have
yeah,
been that a couple of days ago, and like Germany got mad and stuff. It's like, excuse me, no, you people. Well, see, like I told you a long time ago, like I mean, Europe to me, a lot of those countries are compromised. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I mean,
yeah. No, I
compromised.
understand.
You know, like um, yeah, on all kinds of stuff. And like I said, I don't have nothing against Europe as a whole. The people, so I mean, the leaders, you know, they're on their agenda too, and they want us to be like them.
Yeah,
And you know, that's why the USA is the USA. Uh, we don't um we don't answer to nobody. I mean, it's not like we're saying we're gonna kick everyone's ass and everything like that. It's just that you guys, we have our own laws and stuff going on, right? And
yeah,
they just want to like impose their crap on us,
yeah,
right? I mean, it's terrible. And then like the people, like I don't really want to get into the thing. I just seen a thing about England about the groomers and stuff. I mean, I don't want to get involved with that. I don't want to say that and stuff. But it's like getting crazy. And they let the people go. They let the people go who did that.
yeah,
Like some girl was 13, I guess,
yeah,
and she got arrested for being drunk, not because the 10 guys in the room, yada, yada, yada.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's
Cheats
ridiculous. That's
use
ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Cheats has just made a good word there, and that word is the bigger plan, which is why we've seen the societies that I knew when we were growing up just become so destroyed. I've fond memories as a kid during the 80s, and hence the
Right. Yeah.
reason why I did that live quite a few weeks back. And I just see how things have
Yeah,
changed.
no, I was right. I mean, I remember. Yeah, yeah, that remember I told you? Yeah, I watched that show. That was, yeah, I love being a kid in the 80s. I'm telling you.
Slimony, good to see you, my man. Slimony Cricket's here.
Hey, Slim, yeah, sorry, Chad, I can't see you. I put the phone in the trunk, but for good. But yeah, I just and we were talking about like the shows and stuff. I can't. I don't know. I mean, everyone's going crazy on this YouTube, man. And I'd like to have us like like you and me conversating and you know interacting and stuff like that is great. I always enjoyed talking with you, but
Yeah, no,
people are
absolutely.
just
I'm
go
glad.
off the people go off the rails and go after their families and all the nonsense. I mean,
Yeah,
see, I'm the kind of person that would take a drive if you ask me, if you know what I'm saying.
yeah,
And I don't want to, you know, I mean, you know what I'm saying. I don't put up with that crap, and I would go, but I don't. I am not that person anymore or anything like that. But I just, you know what I mean. I just conversations and stuff is great, but when they get too like into families and stuff, I mean, I don't know. These people are crazy, and
yeah,
sometimes they need to get hit. Okay, I'll put it that way. Like my younger days, that would have been the end of that. Like you know, like when you were younger. I mean, I don't know about you, but me, anyone bothered me, I could just go out and hit them. That was it.
yeah.
Well,
That's what it.
man, I
Yeah, that's how
mean,
it
you know,
was
you gotta
then.
be like a man. I mean, you know, that's. But see, these days is like internet and call people's work, and I mean, oh my god, that would or call people's moms and stuff. I mean, oh my god, dude. See, I'm Irish. I mean, I don't put up with that shit.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know,
Myself, I've got
yeah.
Ireland in me.
Well, I mean, I'm, I don't. Yeah, I don't like people do that. You're going under the belt, and then there's no rules in my eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
Ex-
saying what you're thinking, but I mean, they need to get the ass handed to
Yeah,
them.
no,
You know,
100%. Like I say, Joe just mentioned there, the US is doing the change, and we hopefully that the UK is going to follow in the same direction. I like that as
right?
well. Like Trump turned around and said, "I'm going to make Canada the 51st state," and I was like,
Yeah, he's just trolling them. Come on.
oh, and I was thinking, can he make UK and Ireland the 52nd and 53rd?
Oh no,
Because
that would never happen.
I know, but
But
it
I
was just
mean, right. But no, see, there's another thing I want to ask you. Like German Chancellor, I think, was talking, and he was like they were saying about like the NATO and stuff and everything. But
yeah,
the thing is, if European Union and all the European countries and stuff are getting their heating gas, and gas for their cars and stuff from Russia, why?
yeah,
But they want our protection to put in all our money in the NATO.
yeah.
That
Well,
doesn't that doesn't
this
make
was
sense.
this is one of the reasons why a lot of people sort of voted to leave because a lot of the richer countries like the Germany, the England, and places like that, UK, sorry, they effectively had to start supporting some of the other countries. And
Right.
what you'll find is it's very hard to try and bring a union like that together when you've got but so many different languages spoken, so many different sort of work
And
ethics, and
GDPs too, gross national
yeah, it's
GDP.
just
You know what I mean? Like
some
some countries, right. Yeah, right. I hear you.
and it was just not practical in the end. They just thought they would, and it weren't. I don't think it was ever thought out properly. I think they just kind of threw it all in and see what comes of it, and it started
Well,
to
yeah, right.
fragment.
You can't do that. I mean, you got to have like people on the ground talking with people in these different countries. You know what I mean, right? Like
Yeah,
you would do. Like you can't just say, "Here, I'm doing this," and expect everyone to be all good with that. You know what I mean? You got to talk to people.
yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Yeah. But I mean, that's what I mean. Then they were like the German guy was going crazy about the USA and stuff. But like that's what my question would be. Germany, if you're so scared of Russia and all the European countries, why are you buying gas with them? If they wanted to, they could turn that off and you'd be freezing.
Well, the thing is, as well, is part of being part of NATO. Every country, I can't remember, it's 3% or whatever it is of
Or
their
yeah, stupid.
GDP.
I think it's 1 or 2%, depending. So richer countries would pay.
No, I think it was a flat rate across the board. But obviously, if you're a country like I don't know Estonia, let's say your turnover is 1 billion, and then I'm just hypothetically
Yeah,
speaking here,
right.
and you've got the US that's 1 trillion. 3% of 1 trillion is a lot more than 3% of a billion, So that's how
Right.
it's a percentage on what you earn. And what was happening is a lot of countries were not paying it. Some were only paying 1%, some got to 2%, and it was just so where are all the holes being filled? Why are you not paying up?
Well, yeah, the richer countries, like you got, everyone made an agreement. The richer countries, you're obligated, well, let's say 2%, whatever, of
Yeah,
the GDP. I mean, I'm just making this up. I don't know the number. If you guys signed the thing, you gotta own up to it, and they weren't. The richer countries weren't doing it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? That's not like part of the deal. I mean, you guys signed paper. You know all that nonsense, right? Contracts, whatever. You guys made agreements. You gotta uphold your end, and then the other countries, like the ones that you said like very low GDPs,
yeah.
you let them in, so you had knowledge of their money. So if you let them in, how is someone going to bitch about their money when you're not paying your fair share,
Because
right?
they were basically it was never about fair. It was going to be Ukraine. Then hopefully when they got Ukraine, that the the people would turn on the current establishment in Russia. Then Russia would fall. Then they'd break Russia up like they broke up Yugoslavia, and it'll just keep sweeping across until they have full control of everywhere in the world. And
Right.
that's my opinion, obviously. And I
Well, I
think
don't think Ukraine is. They're never going to be in NATO. It's just
no,
it's
but what
all
I'm
the
saying is
talking points.
it was more on the globe that NATO's being used to as part of one of the tools for the globalist ideology. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, well, I mean they might want that, or I don't. They're saying that, but I don't think they want that. That's what
Yeah.
I think. You know, but well yeah, I'm as an American, I don't like other countries telling us what to do. I mean I'm not. You know what I mean? I mean that's just like the way a German guy was talking shit about us. Was like, excuse me, asshole. Sorry about my language.
Yeah, it's fine. I had said the F word earlier because it was part of the
Oh,
book.
okay, yeah,
So.
I caught the end of it. Like I said, I have classes going on and everything. Well, yeah, but yeah, I don't like. It's like rich to me that all these European countries are talking shit about us, but then you want us to protect you, and
Well,
we
listen,
pay.
when they're getting a good deal and they don't have to pay this, they're getting this, free that. As soon as you go, hold on a sec, well, this is not fair. Then all of a sudden, you're not. They're not your mate anymore. It's
Well, yeah, but they knew that coming in. Like when before we signed, you know how they sign the papers or whatever they do. I don't know what they do, but you guys made agreements. Okay, this, and that, and that's it, right? And then you can't like cry about something that you signed, right?
yeah,
Your agreements or whatever they do. I don't know
yeah. Well,
nothing about
exactly.
that.
If they've entered contracts and they haven't been honouring their side of the contract,
And then they're bitching. That's not.
yeah,
That's not like. And then I mean that's. I mean as an American, I just don't. To me, I don't like when European or any country talk shit about us. It's like, yeah, but you don't care about when we send them checks to you. You know what I mean? I don't. I as an American, I don't like that.
yeah. So basically, what you're saying is you never liked us all along, but you were happy with us when we were sending you money.
Well,
Is the long and
yeah.
short of
I
it.
mean, I'll just give you another example. Like like in the immigration stuff we're dealing with still from Biden's nonsense. Well, these
Yeah,
countries are not like I seen a thing like Mexico. Oh, we're not accepting no people deportations. But this is the problem with Mexico. You let
yeah,
all these people in on your southern border, meaning their southern border. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And
Let
then
the
and
all
then
and you know what they said was, okay, all these people of the countries, okay, we'll let you through, but you gotta keep going north, and you're gonna go across the
yeah, but
border.
this is what happens when you had the weak like Biden government because Mexico will say we're not taking them, and they'll go all right then back down. But as soon as you turn around and say no, you're taking them, or we're going to put heavy tariffs on goods coming in and out, then they go then suddenly they start coming into line, and that's what you have to be sometimes. You got to be a bit firm.
Right, and then but I was saying a couple of days ago, I heard that they're not accepting their own people back, the Mexicans, like the illegal alien Mexicans that came here illegally, I guess.
Well, this is
They're not accepting them back now.
absolutely no. It's just this. The thing that like everyone's starting to see signs of a relief, but it's kind of it's been crying out. We've been crying out for it for a long time,
Oh yes, for sure.
and it's taken. For me, my honest opinion, it's taken too long for it to happen. You
Oh,
know, if
democracy is slow. You know that.
yeah,
You know, justice system slow. I'm sure it's the same thing in England, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
system's it is slow. The problem is with like say with England is that they don't. We had that incident with the riots, and after those three little girls were brutally killed,
Right.
and what happens is you've got the government now that they kind of the they tend to side more with the minorities, and they're saying that it was two-tier policing, and it's true that they're worried about their image is worried about seen as being offensive. And obviously, the one thing about the UK is that it's always had the Commonwealth. So it, like France and Spain and a few other countries, colonised the knot of Africa and other places. And obviously, as part of that now, they're kind of, you have to keep integrating society. The problem what you've got is you've got what you would call the, if you want to call another word, indigenous, the white population, whatever, the family values are not there. I did a show on the nuclear family, and we're not breeding like we used to. We're not having the big families anymore. And so what the money men in the banks and that, they need to have the numbers to keep the head count up, to keep the tax money rolling in. And if the population is seen to be dwindling, they have to import it. And what you've got is you're getting your people to come in, but they're not integrating. They're not what you ever heard the saying? Well, yeah, exactly. Well, you hear the saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? And it's funny you should say that. That saying is the same. One reason why the Roman Empire absolutely collapsed is because of what you saw, something similar, where they were getting in. They weren't getting like what we call your indigenous Romans, so they were having to get outsiders come in, and the whole thing just fell apart. And that's what you kind of see happening. And you've got like a mishmash, and no one's really you haven't got a sense of community. When I went to school, I was part of an Irish. It was Irish and Italian because I'm Roman Catholic, but you kind of all connected with all the primary schools. They all fed into like several secondary schools, and everyone knew everyone. Like you would know who some schools. Now you don't know who you're rubbing shoulders with. You don't know. It's got that bad in certain areas. It's like an airport. You don't, people coming in and out.
Yeah, international airport, like at JFK, you can see all kinds of people. Right.
Yeah, there's no familiarity. Everyone had an idea who everyone was. Now you just don't know anymore.
Right. And I seen a thing like a while back, like the no-go zones in England. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean,
I see that. There was certain,
you know what I mean? Especially, okay, go ahead. Sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know what you're so talking about. They were called like Shearer law zones. Were set up. I don't know how much truth there is in that. I tell you what, they're probably more in no-go zones where you had a lot of gang community, and they weren't. The gangs was kind of sort of like from other areas of the world. They weren't from generations of English settlers. And that was where a lot of them zones kind of got set up. But yeah, it's
no, but I've seen these on YouTube that they're like the UK cops. They don't have to go. They can't get in there. They have to talk to someone, and it's like, oh my god. I mean, you got to talk to someone to get through, and by that time, if something happened, it's all cleaned up.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just, to me, like, I draw the line. You got to protect. Everyone's got to protect the family. I mean, that's like, that should be unwritten. I mean, you know what I mean? That's to me. I mean, I don't know. Like, if you mess with my family, I'm probably going to prison. I mean, that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Chris Trock, how you doing there, my man?
Yeah, sorry I can't see the chat.
Yeah, I just need to do something for Chris.
Hey,
Chris.
Trock, how you doing, buddy?
Chris, how you doing, my man? I don't know if Slim's still here or not. I think he might have gone, but there's the if you want to come up and join us and say hello. We've just been talking about covered the topic, the racetrack gangs. We're just having a talk about how Trump's come in, and we're just sort of over in the States, and how things are changing and how things might certainly improve for the better. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, right? I'm up for legal migration. The countries are built in that way. But we need to, as I say, we need to know who's coming in, and you need to make sure that it's the right people you've got coming in.
And you want to assimilate.
Well, we have we have a free private health service, not sorry, a public health service, the NHS, and the problem is that NHS needs to be funded all the time. And what you've had in previous governments is that hospitals and health institutions have been closing, and
Right.
the population's been increasing. So what you've then got is you've got a backlog in your A&E. Staff are overrun, and they
Less
just
money,
aren't able.
more
Yeah,
people.
they ain't able to. There's not enough hospitals and healthcare and staff to function the number of people that are getting ill. And if you've been a taxpayer all your life, that's one of the perks of the free health service. And you find yourself that you're dumped at the queue. You're not treated ahead of someone who's been on benefits or someone who's just come into the system. That's how they do it.
Right. Yeah, sorry, I had to charge my phone. I'm charging my phone right now. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Sorry. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, wait. Hold up a second, Jimmy. Oh, little.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, I thought I hit something. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know, man. Jesus, it's this. And there's another thing too. I seen this. I think it was right after JD Vance was talking to the European Union or whoever they were talking to. That like the UK cops saying, or I think they were the head people. Sorry, that they said something about like if Americans or if anyone says anything like negative, that they could be arrested. I mean, like I don't understand that.
What
And
in the UK?
no, but I'm talking about like no. I mean, you guys have your laws. I got that. That's crazy to me.
Yeah,
But
well, there was
can't say
people that were tweeting
that
and got jailed.
pardon me, what?
People in the UK got tweeting. They were tweet because after the little girls got stabbed,
Right,
Musk had obviously not long taken over X, and what happened was there was riots and gangs of people went to because a lot of the people that were coming in over by the boats and things like that, there was
right,
nowhere to keep them, and they were being housed in hotels. And so what happened? Twitter had been a social media platform. It all stirred up, and people were saying, right, but naturally outraged. An 18-year-old or 17-year-old at the time went and stabbed 3 girls to death at a Taylor Swift little dance school.
right.
Only
Yeah, I
little
think yeah, I
babies, you know
remember
what I
that.
mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he went in there and butchered them, and the people just went absolutely berserk. And a lot of people were saying, right, okay, I'm going to go down to the hotel and burn the hotel down. And people were angry. They went down to these hotels, and like the police came, things like that. But what had happened is then there was more. The government seemed more bothered about throwing those people in jail who did those tweets than actually getting to grips with the problem that was going on. And then you had sort of rival factions in Birmingham and places like that
Right,
of other minorities who started smashing the streets up, and the police were going after what you'd say, the indigenous population, but letting the others get away with it. So that's where the two-tier comes from. The two-tier
right. It's
king.
like selective outrage. I mean, like the crime should have been the problem, not the people bitching about they want to let the person know. Or I mean, I'm not saying like I mean those people going to that hotel, they weren't going to be playing nice. I mean, they
Yeah,
wanted to string them up or whatever allegedly, but they thought that was worse than the actual crime of the little girl.
yeah,
I mean, that's crazy to me. See, and then that's another thing. That's how like Europe. I mean, to me as an American, that they kind of push their crap on us. Like we're not fine with that. Like I don't care. I mean, obviously I'm white. If I seen some black girl like walking on the street and someone's trying to snatch her in a car, I'd be attacking that guy. I'd be telling the
yeah. Of
girl get
course,
back.
because
And it doesn't matter. It's a child.
yeah,
It's
it's a
not
child.
it's not like
It's
I'm
your
not gonna say
moral
black child
obligation.
or a white child. It's a child. I just said black so you would know what I'm saying. It's not.
Right,
It's
right.
at the end of the day, it's a child. I don't care if it was a
Yes,
Chinese woman. You're not doing that in front of me, right? Because I wasn't raised like that.
Yeah, if you've been raised properly, you know what's right and what's wrong, and it doesn't matter who or what that person is. If someone you see something someone's doing wrong by them, it's your you by what you know and what you understand. It's your right to go over there and intercept and to save them, and make
Right.
sure
That
that
could be like my little, well, not my sister, but you know what I mean. Or like
yeah,
your, or my mom, someone attacking some old lady. That could be my mom. You know what I mean? Or, anyone's mom. So that's why I don't like, to me, there's rules. Like, you know how I feel about that stuff. I don't, you know what I mean? Anything that do like mess with kids, family, all that crazy stuff, is off limits. And, there's repercussions. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, so this is it. This is it, and this is it's the old school ways, and this is how it should be from what we were taught. And I don't understand how that you could just rush everyone, and anyone, and just think that it's all okay when it's clearly going to have a detrimental impact on the society when you don't know who you're letting in.
Well,
And
yeah,
that
uh, legal immigration is great. Do
yeah,
the thing,
absolutely, good
but
thing.
the thing is that these families, like, well, let's say like South America or whatever, they had to pay coyotes like 7 grand a person. Okay, so if you got 4 people, that's 28 G's.
Yeah,
Okay, the problem is that you do that, and then okay, you're giving money to people, the bad people, and then if you got little girls, you know what happens on those trips,
yeah.
and boys too. So and even the women, and then they come up and then they want a handout, and then they get the and it's just ridiculous, man. We got people sleeping on the street. You know what I
No,
mean?
absolutely, and I know that I'm not going all out saying that I'm a religious dog, but I would say something, and I feel that certainly the Christian segment of a lot of these countries, mine included, and America, is the when there was kind of religious instruction sort of around us, we were better as people, we were more together as a unit, and I felt that in recent times a lot of that's been lost. Do you know what I mean? As we kind of, as society ourselves, has capitulated, and hence the reason we've kind of sort of been allowed to be overrun a little bit as well. I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
Uh okay, yeah. I was I had a mind fart. Sorry, buddy. No, I heard some of it. Well, I know I was think you can say that again, but I wanted to say one thing. It says you have a comment up here. Suzanne says that's why it's good EU doesn't allow firearms. Well, see, Susan. Okay, if someone wants a gun, they could get a gun. Okay, and that's just my opinion. But yeah, please repeat that, buddy. I'm sorry. I was just kind of
No, well, no, but generally, what go on Suzanne's comment, you could still, if you want, you can get a gun in England off the black market,
right.
right? And you don't, and you're not getting, believe it or not, you're not getting the gun from America, you're getting the gun from Europe. And when you get all a lot of the guns are sort of like the old Soviet weapons and
Or
things like
German
that are coming
stuff.
through. As I
Right.
said before, you've got in Europe, you've got open borders, you've got many countries that can be crossed over, you've got different legislations, different languages. It's actually very easy to get things from the east to the west, from
Oh yeah,
Europe.
and they're bribing people too. Come on,
Yeah,
people.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Let's see what he's saying. Joe Delamora says, "As the government also the government lied. He was on the terrorist watch list. I don't know who that is. I mean, I know Joe Delamora, but he says also the government lied. He was on the terrorist watch list.
I don't know.
I
Sorry,
think he's
Joe.
regarding. I think he was
So,
regarding that person with the who killed those little
right. Is it?
girls.
I think Joe's talking about the boy, the 17-year-old who stabbed the girls.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right, right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to say that. They don't. The government never wants to do that. See, it's the same thing in the states. Like
Yeah.
Lake and Riley, right? That girl who got killed. in Georgia. Well, New York. Oh yeah, I don't. New York. That guy who killed that girl, like months earlier, that guy arred some little girl,
Yeah.
and they let him go. And so what happened was, he said, "I'm hauling ass. I'm getting out of here." Goes out of Georgia. 2 months later, boom.
Yeah.
See, I'd be suing Letitia James in New York, and they could go. I mean, that's just me, but I mean, obviously, going against the government, you know what I mean. But I'd be raising hell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then we're the bad guys. Hey, you know what I mean? Like I said, I don't have a problem with legal immigration. I don't have a problem with that. You know what I mean? That's not a problem. But when you're coming in and you want all the shit, and then you think that you're doing anything, well, see, that's the problem right there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But anyway, well, yeah, that just bothers me. And these people think they're all uppity up, like in New York and stuff. Like, I don't know these people how they sleep. They let this guy go, who did that allegedly to a 13-year-old girl. It doesn't matter. If I did that, I'm gonna get buried under my jail. I should, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you, I mean, obviously I don't do that, but you know what I'm saying? That's anything. And they get let go, and they got no repercussions and stuff. And then this is ridiculous, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's definitely, as I say. Well, like I say, things are looking on the up anyway. I'd like to. I'm going to wrap the show up now and say, Kid Rock,
Okay.
thank
Cool.
you. It's always a pleasure having you here, sir. It's good to see you.
James, I'll look at the replay. I'm sorry, and I haven't been feeling good and lots of going on with me and everything. But I'll check the replay, because right when I got in there, obviously that's when I got in there. When I hello James system in the chat and everything. So I'll check it out, man. But a lot of stuff's going on and everything, and everyone's gone crazy on YouTube. So I'm like, you know me, I don't subscribe to crazy. Okay, I'm serious. I mean, I'll tell you this. I was like, when I was like decades ago, I was subscribed to crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
but those days are over, like decades ago. So that's why I say that I don't subscribe to crazy, because I know what crazy is. Drinking, drugs, going crazy, you know, bad stuff. But I've been good for, knock on wood, for decades. So that's how it is. But yeah, James, thank you for having me on, buddy. I'm sorry I can't see the chat.
I'm just
but
going to quickly go.
ahead.
I'm going to do a roll call.
Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead. You good?
Thank them all. Suzanne, thank you for coming. Thank you, Joe Delamora. Delilah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're right. It was a lot stricter back then. You had to prove stuff.
Right.
Chris Trock, good man. Good to see you, sir.
Yep.
Who else we got?
David was here earlier. I seen that when I came in.
Maureen, thank you. Cheech and Slimony, good stuff. Dave T, Paulie Donuts. They're all there. Team Do was in here as well earlier. Stu D popped in. Yeah, good stuff. Surviving Together, of course, came in. Hollywood 210. Okay, yeah, I think I've got everyone. So, and Janie as well. Thank you. Well, Kid Rock, thank you, sir.
James, you're my big buddy, man. You know you're all good with me. So,
I'll start doing a few more shows. As I say, I want to get this. Wanted to get this one out the way. And
right.
And then I'll start focusing on just maybe do a few more chats like we can have here, and just a bit open air.
Yeah, that was always fun. Like, say what's on our mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. And like we call it in America chewing the fat. Right?
Yeah.
Chewing the fat, like talking with the guys and gals, and stuff like that. But James, it's always a pleasure talking with you. You're my buddy, man. You're all good with me.
Yeah.
And everyone in chat and James, you all be safe. And I'll catch you guys on the flip, man. James, thank you for having me on, buddy.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Have a good night.
Cheers, mate. Bye.